Hey guys, welcome back to the United Star. Today we have a very special guest. I don't need to introduce him, but I'll read out his Instagram bio. He's one quarter of the Stratford paddock. He's one half of Scotty, and I forgot the second name. I'm so sorry. It's Morty,
Scotty
of
and
course.
Morty. Scotty and
and
Morty.
and he's the fifth most important person in his family. That's what he says. It's Jay Morty from Stratford Paddock. Jay, thanks for coming on. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be on, and I can't believe you forgot the second part of Scotty and Morty. That's the most important part. It's me.
Yeah, I think apologies for that. So Jay, just before we start this discussion, I just want to ask you. Very recently, you had the chance to interview a certain manager who I think is probably the greatest manager to have ever walked a football pitch, Sir Alex Ferguson. Jay, I just want to know how was the experience, because this is something which I think everyone over here would dream of, just to be in the same room as him, talking to him. How was the experience?
Well, anyone who watches the channel and knows me knows I don't like to talk about it. I sort of, I never mention it, but I'll make an exception for you guys. No, it was amazing. Listen, I'm as you know, I'm a Manchester United fan, a massive Manchester United fan. So Alex Ferguson was the manager for most of my lifetime, like you guys. I was sort of 6 years old, I think, when he took over. So throughout my old childhood, most of my childhood, my adulthood, he was the man that delivered all those titles, those trophies, those great teams, those fantastic nights. It was all down to him. So when I met him, I was nervous. I was sort of worried. I was scared I didn't want to upset him. I thought if I ask him something and he gets angry, I'm going to be like devastated. But there was a moment when I interviewed him, and you can go and check out the interview. It's up on the Stratford Paddock channel, where I asked him about his teams in the games in the past, and when the fans mentioned him. I think I asked him about what was his best moment when it came to the fans, and he mentioned it, and he started laughing as he was talking about it, and just having that moment where you think, I'm having a laugh, I'm sharing a laugh with Sir Alex Ferguson. Do you know what I mean? It was a real pinch me moment. And I was just sort of, when I think of that now, it just sort of brings that feeling up again. It was great. And, I only spoke to him for around sort of 2.5, 3 minutes, but it felt like, an eternity, because it's like, oh my God, I'm talking to Sir Alex Ferguson. And it was great just from a personal point of view as well, to see him looking so well, because he's been ill. He had his brain hemorrhage, of course. We were talking about that from the documentary. That was where we were at the documentary. So that was the reason he was there. Sorry. So to see him looking so well, his memory's fantastic. I asked him about the fan moment. He named a team from 1990 and the players that were injured. He listed the players that were missing from the third round of the FA Cup game in 1990. He was saying, like Neil Webb, Danny Wallace, Brian Robinson, all these players were out. And you think, I can't even remember which team United played when we played, the last game we played, the Europa League final, who was injured. He remembered a team from 31 years ago, whatever it was. His memory's fantastic. He looked great. And just from a personal point, as a fan, it was just one of those moments where you think, is this really happening? So yeah, it was just great. And the most important thing for me was that I didn't upset him, because that was what I was worried about. I was asking something, he goes, that's a stupid question, and walks off. I'd have been devastated. I'd probably never gone back on camera ever again.
It's fantastic to hear that, and just fantastic to hear that he's doing so well now. Just moving on, Jay. We had one of the largest protests in football very recently, and the United fans were at the forefront. We got a game cancelled, and probably the largest game in the Premier League calendar. We got that cancelled. Uh, as being a part of Stratford Paddock, which is such a big channel in football fan clubs, uh, there's a certain responsibility associated with it, and it's it's uh, it's just you have to be very responsible. You have a lot of people listening to what you're saying, and your opinion does matter, because there's a lot of people listening to it. So how do you sort of deal with that? How do you make sure that what you're putting out there is something which the people would like and would appreciate?
I think you just got to be honest with yourself as a United fan. you know, when we went into this, there's 4 of us. Obviously, you read out my bio there earlier off my Instagram. There's a lot more than 4 people involved in Stretford Paddock, but there's 4 of us that own it. And when we took it over, it was Full-Time Devils, and we bought it and we own it ourselves. We're all fans. And we said, you know, what are we going to do? What videos are we going to make? What's our sort of mission like, or our, you know, our you know, what is it we're aiming to do with this channel, and what's our end goal? And I think it was just to produce the sort of videos and the content that we as Manchester United fans would like to watch. Just be honest about our opinions. There's no agenda. You know, you could come on our channel and you can say something that is completely opposite of what I think, but that we won't stop you coming on. We like that. We like healthy debate. We like healthy discussion. And I think that's the most important thing, is to maintain that integrity by being honest. We're always going to be honest. We are United fans. We back Manchester United as a club. We back the players and we back the manager, actually. Most of us just are Ole Gunnar Solskjaer supporters. That's not an agenda we've got where we say, if you come on, you've got to back the manager. It's just how we feel. We all collectively dislike, in fact, I use the word, we hate the Glazers. We do. We don't want them at our football club. And if you watch any of our videos, going back to the Full-Time Devils days, if you look at our tweets, our posts, anything we've all done, whether that's me, McCullough, Howson or Joe, we've always said we want the Glazers gone from our football club. So I think when we went into this, we said we're just going to be honest. We're just going to continue to be honest about how we feel. Now, some people may disagree with some of our videos. Some people may feel we're not harsh enough on the Glazers. Others say we're too harsh on them. You can't win. All you can do is be honest. And we keep doing that. We'll keep giving people a platform, and we'll keep just sort of trying to produce the sort of content that we can be proud of. You know, when I look back on the videos we've made, I can look back at every single video and think, you know what, no matter what anyone thinks of that video, it was an honest video. It was how we felt. And when it came to the protest, there's been a few protests at Old Trafford recently. There's been protests going back years, actually 16 years, but more recently there's been a couple. We've been down there, we've been covering them, we've been speaking to people who've been down there, and we've just been being honest. And we just say, you know, tell us why you're here, what you're doing. And that's what we've been doing. And we're glad that there's those protests, because, you know, you guys might be over in India, but you've got a big part to play in this as well. As much a part as I have. You know, you've got an audience there. You've got people that care about this football club. You care about Manchester United as much as I do. The only difference between me and you is I'm physically able to go down to Old Trafford and protest, where you might not be able to get down there, but you can still post on social media. You can still encourage others to get down there. You can still let people know your feelings. You know, people will look to you and they'll say, okay, what are these guys saying about it? So you've got, you know, the opportunity there to let people know. And, you know, you might reach a bigger audience than I do. You might reach more people than I do. I think the only thing I would advise anyone to do is just to be honest about it. Don't try and sort of feel like you're pressured or you have to think one way or the other. You look at Manchester United Football Club. What do you think about Manchester United Football Club? How much do you love it? What do you think what the Glazers have done to it? And then be honest with you. And I think if anyone is honest, I'm not trying to tell you what to say, but if anyone is honest about what the Glazers have done to Manchester United, they'll know that the Glazers have not been good owners and that we need positive change. And I think with fans like yourselves being vocal, letting people know, I think we can get that change.
Yeah, I think that is the goal. I think you can see Atanu's banner behind. It says Glazers out, and I think that's what is required for United to progress. Talking about progress, we've had a very topsy-turvy sort of season, you could say. The league position's been good. Second, it's okay, but we've not done well in the other competitions. We were knocked out of the Champions League and whatnot. Atanu, you can continue.
Yeah, so Jay, you know that we were the runners-up in the Premier League, and initially it was a shaky start to the season. And towards after the first 5-6 games, Oli was under this pressure, and there was a lot of media talk that Oli is going to be sacked. But he turned it around, and till January we were unbeaten in the league. And he finally overcame that semi-final voodoo or semi-final curse, and we reached the Europa League final. Quarter-final in the FA Cup, semi-final in the EFL Cup, final in the Europa League. Is it a campaign of progress or is it a campaign of heartbreak?
It's a very, very good question. I'd say it is progress, but there's a little bit of heartbreak in there as well, because to lose to Manchester City in the League Cup semi-final was disappointing. To lose the Europa League final to Villarreal, a team that finished, 8th, I think, in La Liga. And this isn't a vintage La Liga either. It was very disappointing indeed. But you can see the moves that and the progress that is being made under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. What sort of annoys me a little bit when people criticise Ole is people look at this league season and they go, oh, well, Liverpool had a bad season. City weren't at the best, even though they won the league in the end. Arsenal were terrible. Spurs were terrible. All these other teams that they look at, Leicester fell off a cliff in terms of form towards the end of the season. Chelsea didn't have a great start and didn't have a good season. They sacked Lampard. The coronavirus and the pandemic and the lack of a pre-season and injuries affected everyone. But why don't we give Ole Gunnar Solskjaer that credit? Why don't we say, okay, all these teams had a bad season, yet because of the reasons I've listed, because of the pandemic, because of lack of training, because of injuries or anything else, yet we still finished second. Why? We had to deal with all the same things that everyone else had to deal with. We had no pre-season. We had one game against Aston Villa in pre-season. We came into this season, Paul Pogba, arguably our most talented player, had COVID. And he wasn't himself for months. For about 2 months, he was as bad as I've ever seen him. It's obviously COVID affected him. We had to deal with other things like that. We had to deal with injuries. We had to deal with the fact we weren't properly backed in the summer. He wasn't. We got Edinson Cavani, who turned out to be a good signing on a free agent. You had Donny van der Beek, a decent signing, but £35 million, not a player that you think is going to come straight into the Manchester United team. Alex Telles, a backup left back. Facundo Palestre, a player that may well never even play for Manchester United first team. And I'm not being horrible towards the kid. He was just more of a less of a bit of a sort of a gamble, should we say, on a young player that might or might not be good enough. And Amad Diallo, he's a good young player, but he's one for the future. So it wasn't like we went out like Chelsea and we went, okay, here's a load of money, let's go big. Even Manchester City, I think, spent more than us. Even Liverpool, who had all their problems, went out and bought Thiago Alcantara and Diogo Jota, two players who, if everyone's fit, I think both those players start for them. So we weren't back properly in the transfer window, and yet we had to deal with all the other problems everyone else did, and we still finished second. And I think Ole deserves credit for that. So yes, it's disappointing in the cup competitions. We didn't lift the trophy. Listen, you guys know better than anyone. We're Manchester United. Even now, we should be about winning silverware. I'm not here to say, we got to a final, we got to a semi-final, we got to a quarter-final. Let's have a parade. We're not going to do that. But we have finished second pretty comfortably as well in the end, and we have got past the semi-final hoodoo, as you mentioned. So now I need to see us kick on. We've got to win something next season. We really have. Or at least, or both, have a title challenge. Because I know we were title challenging for a little bit this season, but it wasn't a proper title challenge. Yep. We need to do that. And the way to do that, it pains me to say it because it's so obvious, but it's true, is to spend money this summer. We have to back the manager. Manchester City have got a much bigger and better squad than we have. We're not going to get closer to them by spending less than they do or not adding to this squad. We need players that can come in and challenge the first team. So you need a midfielder that can come in and play in front of the defence. You need a striker that can challenge the likes of Anthony Martial and Edinson Cavani. Looks like we're going to get a right winger in Jadon Sancho. That's going to be a positive. Well, that shouldn't be the end. Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm sure you're all sick of the transfer rumours with Jadon Sancho. I know I am. But we need to build. We need to build properly and get in at least 3 players who can challenge the first team. Because otherwise, we're not going to be able to kick on from next season. And if Ole ends up finishing 3rd or 4th, it's going to be seen as a disappointment.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point. You mentioned the positions that you'd like to see United strengthen. What worries me a little is that we're hearing about Jadon Sancho. Of course, the rumors are out there, and it's going on. But we sometimes, you're hearing about centre backs with interested in Varane, the Pau Torres. It's happening. But from my personal opinion, I felt that we really needed a defensive midfielder in our team, a real good defensive midfielder. But there are no rumors that you don't hear the buzz around us being involved with any defensive midfielder. I mean, what do you think about that? We need a centre defensive midfielder. Do you agree?
100%. I couldn't agree more. We need a defensive midfielder like Joel Glazer needs a slap in the face. We need it. Do you know what I mean? That is what is the most important position for us, because we've got Fred, who's not a defensive midfielder, and you've got Scott McTominay, who's not a defensive midfielder. We're playing them both because we don't have a DM. If you had a defensive midfielder, you probably don't need to play either of those players. You play them and you can play probably Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes in front of him, because that's the main problem I've got with our team. It's not the defense. I think defensively we're okay. Yes, I'd like to see someone like a Pau Torres or Rafael Varane come in and partner Harry Maguire. But I actually think if you've got a defensive midfielder in front of Maguire and Lindelof or Maguire and Bailly, they can do a job. It's just the fact that in front of them, they've got Fred, who consistently gives the ball away in dangerous areas. You've got McTominay, who I think is slightly better than Fred, but not hugely, who, again, isn't used to that role, isn't suited to that role, does like to get around the pitch a lot, doesn't just sit in front of the defence, which is what a good defensive midfielder should do. So I think you're at a bit of a hiding to nothing when you keep sort of trying to play two players who are basically box-to-box midfielders as defensive midfielders. And another thing with sort of Fred and McTominay is, I know McTominay, I think he's 24 years old. You know, he's got a lot of improvement. Fred's 28. He's probably at his ceiling now. He's not going to get a lot better. He's not going to suddenly become a much better player. This isn't a James Garner or Dylan Levitt or someone where you might go, give him a few more seasons or another season and he can play as a number 6. He's never going to learn that role if he's not learned it already. So I think I'm 100% with you guys. That should be a priority for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He should go out, get a DM, and it worries me. We're not linked with anyone properly, are we? You know, there's Sal Niguez and there's, you know, Declan Rice, rumours, but they're not real transfer stories in terms of, oh, it looks like United are scouting him or making a bid or anything like that. It's just more like paper talk or fans saying they'd like to see that happen. If we don't get a CDM, I don't see how we win the league next season. I really don't. I think that without that, it's going to be a massive, massive ask for this team to win a title with Scott McTominay and Fred as our midfield double pivot.
Yeah, you made a valid point there, Jay, that we need a CDM and there's not much buzz around it. So moving on, I want to ask you about Harry Maguire. We all know that Harry Maguire initially, towards the start of the season, didn't perform well, maybe because he started the season at the back of a difficult period in his life, which was the Greece incident that had happened. And, you know, towards after that Spurs game, there was a lot of backlash towards Maguire. And I saw a lot of fans on social media tweeting that, no, Harry Maguire is not our captain. Give the captain's armband to Bruno, which is fine. I mean, I like Bruno. Everybody likes Bruno. But, you know, sometimes I think that being vocal on the pitch and is not the only trait that a leader should have. I think Maguire is a good leader. And we saw that towards the end of the season, we played 5 games. Leeds, Leicester, Liverpool, Villarreal, Fulham, Wolves. Out of these 5 games, we lost 3 games. We drew with Fulham and we won against Wolves. And it was clearly visible that we were missing organization at the back. So how do you think, how impactful Harry Maguire is towards this team? And do you think the backlash against him being the captain of the Manchester United men's team is true, is valid?
So it's 2 very good points. How important is Harry Maguire to this Manchester United team? He's vital. That's why we spent that money on him. I know we overspent on him. I get that. But we spent it for a reason because he's someone that can come into that defence and do a job for it and organise it, help organise it. He does do a lot of help to organise it as well. People say he's not a vocal captain, but he does do a lot of that. He does sort of, always hear him shouting and stuff. You know, when now we've not got crowds or we've not had crowds, you can hear more of the players when you're watching it on the TV and you can hear him and he's quite vocal. He has been a bit of a leader there. Probably not the sort of old-fashioned captain in the sense of a Roy Keane or Brian Robson who's rallying the troops constantly, but he does a very good job at being a sort of a captain, if you will, just doing that job that he's meant to do. So I think he deserves more credit for that. I think the problem is with Harry Maguire is when he, as you mentioned, the incident in Mykonos, he came back. It's obviously got in his head. It affected his performances, and people were hammering him for it. And people were saying, "Oh, you know what? He's not good enough." And he was just going through a difficult time. And players are going to be affected when something's going on off the pitch. Harry Maguire seems like someone who, he sort of carried that around with him, and he's dealt with everything well. He's dealt with the price tag well. He dealt with coming into a big club like Manchester United as a big money signing very well. He dealt with having to have different centre back partners. Where 1 minute it's Axel Tuanzebe, then it's Eric Bailly, then it's Victor Lindelof. He dealt with all that. And eventually he dealt with the issues that he had in terms of what went on in the summer. And I think you've seen it, as you mentioned, that horrible run we had towards the end of the season where we couldn't put a run together. How much we missed him. Harry Maguire, he organises things. He carries the ball out of defence very well. It's a massively underrated trait of his. And we need that, especially when you've got people like Fred and McTominay. I don't want to keep banging on about them because, I do actually like them. I just don't think they're quite the levels we need. But when you've got players like you need a defender, sorry, who is able to carry the ball out a little bit as well. Because as I said earlier, McTominay can go missing sometimes in terms of his position. He isn't where he needs to be. Fred can be a little bit wasteful in front of the defence with his passing. So you need someone who's composed, who can bring that ball out and who can feed it to the likes of Bruno, to the likes of Paul Pogba, to the likes of Fred and McTominay when they're further up the pitch, which they invariably are. So that's why I think Harry Maguire is massively underrated. In terms of the captaincy, I think you might go, well, how can an £80 million player be underrated? But because he gets so much criticism, I think he is. He's a very good defender, and you see it more when he was missing. He played all those games, and you take him for granted. You take him out, and we start losing, and people go, hang on a minute. He's a key member of this team. He's someone that we really need. Now, in terms of the captaincy, people will go in, give it to Bruno, give it to Bruno, give it to Bruno. You don't need to give Bruno Fernandes the armband. He's going to shout at everyone without it. He's going to argue with a referee without it. He's going to be standing over every single free kick and dead ball you get without the captain's armband. He doesn't need that. He's not like you go, we need to give it Bruno Fernandes because he's that's going to make him better, or that's going to make the team better, or that's going to improve anything. If you give the captain's armband to Bruno Fernandes, the only thing you're going to do is make Harry Maguire less confident in his own ability. That is it. That is the only change you will see in that Manchester United team. You are going to make someone like Harry Maguire think, I have lost the captaincy. It's been taken from me. I've been captain, and then it's been taken from me. And that's going to affect his performance because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. Things can affect him. I get that. I don't think that's what we should be doing. You've still got leaders in the likes of Bruno Fernandes. I think Marcus Rashford is a bit of a leader. I think Paul Pogba can be a leader. I think Harry Maguire is a leader as well. So I don't think you need to take the captaincy away from someone like Harry Maguire and give it to Bruno Fernandes. We've got leaders on the pitch at Old Trafford, and I think they're all doing a very good job. And I think Harry Maguire's doing a good job. And I think United and even England as well, people, I know a lot of your views might not care about England. A lot of English United fans don't care about England, to be fair. But England have missed him as well. I think once teams sort of realise what it's like without Harry Maguire, they realise how underrated he can be, even with that massive price tag.
Yeah, I think that the quote that Harry Maguire said in that United podcast, "I'll rest when I retire," is the perfect, it sums up Maguire's season and Maguire's tenure at United.
100%. I love that attitude. And this is the thing as well. He's been a bit unlucky in the sense that he missed the most important game, the final, the Europa League final, because he's played so many games. We've seen it with Eric Bailly, how frustrating it can be when you've got a defender who's constantly out of the team due to injury. Harry Maguire was ever present, and then just when we really needed him, because I think he makes a difference against Villarreal, I really do. He misses the final, misses the chance to lift the trophy, but hopefully he comes back next season and he can sort of take us to some silverware.
Just to add to a little, Jay, you said that we might not care about the English FA team. Let me tell you, 2 out of our 5 members are England supporters, and they keep shouting it's coming home. So it's not really your home, but fair enough.
I mean, listen, that isn't because, I know that fans from abroad support England. I just know that with Manchester United, a lot of United fans, whether you're English or not, just don't care about England. I mean, I've got mates who are English, who just they're not bothered whether England do well. All they care about is Manchester United. But yeah, if they're singing "It's Coming Home," I think you guys might need to stop drinking so heavily.
But just on that point, Jay, is it coming home?
It's a fair comment. It's a fair question. Sorry, I'm old enough to remember. I've said this, since I remember 1996 when we started saying it's coming home, and everyone thought it was. I think 2018 obviously was the closest we've come. I'd be very surprised if England did lift the trophy. I think we've got a decent squad. I don't know if we've got a manager in Gareth Southgate who can win the trophy. I think he's very good at the sort of ambassadorial part of it, being a statesman, handling the press. He's very good at that. I think when it comes to tactics, he's a little bit flawed. And I also think he's probably giving himself a difficult job with the squad he's taken. Now, listen, I'm glad Mason Greenwood hasn't gone to the Euros because I think it would have been a bit of a circus. He's had enough attention this season from the press and negative attention. And I'd hate to see him being blamed if England failed or whatever. But if I was a manager, just looking at it from an objective point of view, Mason Greenwood scored 6 goals, I think, in his last 8 Premier League games. Yeah. Now, you look at someone like Saka for Arsenal, didn't get any. You look at someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, in that same period, got 2. Why are you not taking your informed players? Why are you not taking someone like Mason Greenwood, who has been on fire really in the last couple of months in the Premier League. Why, when you've got a player like Jadon Sancho, who I think he's got 5 goals and 4 assists, if you're going to look at the same period in his last 8 games, I know it's in the Bundesliga, why has he not played any football for England this tournament so far? He's not even got a minute on the pitch. Doesn't make any sense to me. And I think you're making life hard for yourself. I think you should play your best and most informed players. And that is the likes of, I know Mason Greenwood's not there, so he can't. So you're not playing him? Okay, then play the likes of someone like Jadon Sancho, who's scoring goals and getting assists for fun in the Bundesliga. I think that's what Gareth Southgate needs to start looking at, because I watched both games, and against Croatia, it's a solid start. Nothing wrong with that, but we were awful against Scotland. And I say we, because I'm an England fan, although I'm not as passionate about England as I'm about Manchester United, but I do want England to win. Awful against Scotland, and I think the manager's got to take a lot of responsibility for that, because Scotland are a decent team. Let's not forget, they've got some good players. Likes of Robertson, McTominay, Gilmore, John McGinn, all good players. Probably won't get in the England team, but they're very good players. But England had a much better squad, and they just didn't utilise it. There was no system there. And when things weren't working, Gareth Southgate didn't seem to have the tactical nous to change it. Swapping Harry Kane for Marcus Rashford and Phil Foden for Jack Grealish, it didn't do anything. You needed to mix it up a bit. You needed to find a different system. Maybe sacrifice one of your holding midfielders for an attacking midfielder. I don't know. Do something different. And he didn't seem to know what to do with that. So I think he's got a difficult job. And I think that you lot, who the ones on your channel and the ones who are singing "It's Coming Home," don't know. You might be changing your tune in the next week or so.
Hey, just a question. Do you think Marcus Rashford should have gone to the Euros, because he has struggled with injuries over the past season? And I know it's a big tournament and they have a chance of winning it, but still, if as a United fan, I want Rashford to be fit for the start of the preseason.
I would probably have rather he didn't, but I'm glad he did, and I'll explain how that makes any sense, because it sounds contradictory. Marcus Rashford's very proud, obviously, the fact he plays for England. He loves playing for England. You can see that. He captained England just before the Euros. He was so proud of that, and rightly so. Marcus Rashford, I think he's 23 years old, around that age. People assume that he's going to have lots of chances to go to lots and lots of tournaments. He might not. You don't know. I remember when Theo Walcott was 17 and he went to I think it was the World Cup. He never went to another World Cup again. He never had that chance again. Everyone thought, he's going to go to another 3 or 4. He could break the record. He could go to more World Cups than anyone. And he was either injured or dropped because of lack of form. Marcus Rashford might not be fit. He might not be in form. He might not get picked. So this might be, I know it sounds crazy to say this for a 23-year-old. This might be his last chance. You don't know. So I don't think if he's fit enough to play, he should go, I'm not going. I don't think it's his responsibility, and I can understand completely why he wants to go and why he wants to take that chance. Maybe Gareth Southgate should have looked at it and gone, he's not 100%. But I think the problem Gareth Southgate's got is if he says to Marcus Rashford, I'm not taking you because you're not fit, how can he take Harry Maguire? How can he take Jordan Henderson when they're not even fit enough to start? So in answer to your question, I'd probably rather Marcus Rashford didn't go, because I think we need him fit for the start of the season, and we know he's got to have an operation. But I think it's probably better for him that he did, because he would have been gutted to miss out. And also, from an England point of view, when he's on form, Marcus Rashford, he's one of our best players, if not our best player. He's unplayable when he's on form. So if you can get one of those games out of him where maybe it's a quarter-final knockout game where he's on it, he can win you the match, and we need that.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Jay, moving on, I want to ask you about a keeper situation at United. Now, we've seen De Gea has been sort of displaced, and Henderson is our first team keeper, at least for the Premier League games. I have to admit that although I really like Henderson, I love the vibe that he brings with him, because he's Manchester born and bred. I just feel I'm not too confident with him in goal. I don't think he's completely ready yet. And at least for me, I would still like to stick with De Gea in goal right now and maybe let Henderson develop a little more. What do you think about the keeper situation?
It's a very good point. It's a difficult one. And I think the answer may well lie in neither David De Gea or Dean Henderson long term, because Dean Henderson, he's done well. He did well at Sheffield United. He's done okay this season at Manchester United. He's not come into the United team and made himself completely undroppable. He's had a couple of moments where you go, I think it's Sheffield United away, where he gave the ball away. And I think there was one in Europa, was it Milan, I think, in the Europa League, where
He went over him.
yeah. So he's had a couple of moments where you go, bit dodgy there, a bit ropey.
The Liverpool goal also, the Salah goal.
Thank you. Yeah, where he gave Salah just the entire goal to aim at, didn't he? I mean, I'm not a big fan of sort of these freeze frame moments where you go, look at this, because it doesn't tell you the whole story. But it looked bad, didn't it, when it was freeze framed and you just seen like 3/4 of the goal just there, and he'd not closed him down properly. And it was almost like he was going, just tap it in there, Mo, have a goal. It looked bad. So I think it might well be that we end up buying another goalkeeper further down the line. I know it sounds ludicrous when you've got two very good goalkeepers, but we'll have to wait and see. I think for me, I'd go with Dean Henderson purely because David De Gea for the last 18 months, 2 years has just not been good enough. Now, for 4 years, David De Gea was one of the best, if not the best goalkeepers on the planet. He was fantastic. He almost reinvented goalkeeping in the way he used his legs. I've never seen a goalkeeper use his legs the way that David De Gea did. It's crazy because you think, why goalkeepers not always use the legs when it's easier? But they don't. They always try and get down, don't they? Even if it's near the legs, they'll try and get down with the hands. He changed all that. And some of the performances, and you look at the game against Spurs away when Marcus Rashford got the winner, the 1-0. One of the best performances by a goalkeeper I've ever seen. He was just unbeatable. I think it was Dele Alli and Son and Kane. I think those are the players, I might be wrong, forgive me, were just hammering him and they couldn't get past him. And I think he saved about 15 shots or something stupid.
Arsenal match as well.
Great shout. The 3-1 at the Emirates. Again, saving everything. They couldn't get past him. It was just one of those performances where you think if they were still playing now, it'd still be 3-1. They wouldn't have got past him. He was just unbeatable. But since those games, and those were around the same time, he's just not been himself. He's not looked like that player. And you think about it, if you'd have asked me 3 years ago to name mistakes by David De Gea, I could have named you maybe 2. Now, there's so many. I mean, you look at the going back to since then, the Chelsea game, the Barcelona game, the Watford game, I think it was the Everton game, the Crystal Palace game. It's just maybe even Leicester game. You can look at him a little bit. Maybe he could have done a little bit better coming out, commanding his area. It's the Everton game at Old Trafford where I blame him for all 3 goals. And I don't like doing that because I respect David De Gea, but you have to be honest. I said to you earlier about being honest on the channel, and I'll always back the players, but I'll be honest about them. And I think David De Gea's form has just disappeared, and he's no longer the player he used to be. Now, Dean Henderson isn't quite there yet. And I think if I could sort of explain it visually, you've got 2 goalkeepers, and David De Gea was up here and Dean Henderson was up here, and they're sort of like this. One's rising and getting there, and the other one's coming down. But I think the one who's getting there isn't high enough yet, and the one who's coming down is probably just about a little bit lower than him. So you need a goalkeeper who's consistently maintaining that level. I'd give Dean Henderson a chance next season, but it would be his only chance next season. If he has a season next season, even like the one he's just had where he's making mistakes and he isn't cementing that place, then I'd look to buy another goalkeeper, because I think for David De Gea, it might be time to move on for him. I just don't think it's happening for him at Manchester United anymore. And I think you can't keep picking a player because of what he did in 2017 or 2018. You need to pick a player because of what he's doing in 2021.
Yeah,
Tom
definitely.
Heaton might be the answer.
Who?
Tom
Heaton.
Heaton.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, though, he's 35. He's not, you wouldn't think he's going to come in and be our first choice. He might do. He might get a chance and just amaze you. I mean, he played very well for Burnley once against us. You remember that 0-0 where we couldn't get past him? He was just unbelievable. But who knows? Maybe it's Lee Grant.
Definitely. So, Jay, one last question that I wanted to ask you. We've seen that Manchester United Academy is one of the best in the world. We've seen the likes of Dean Henderson, Paul Pogba, Scott McTominay, Marcus Rashford, Mason Greenwood, and to some extent Axel Tuanzebe come into the first team and cement their place. We've seen the famous class of 92. Of course, I wasn't alive back then, but I've heard so many stories. Right now, there are, in this season, we saw the likes of Will Fish, Hannibal Mejbri, Shola Shoretire, Anthony Elanga, and Ethan Galbraith was also in the Europa League squad. So there were a lot of new faces in the first team. So which of these players, or other than them, which player excites you the most and the player that you would want to see in the first team? For me personally, he's James Garner. He's the answer to our CDM's problems.
You know what? right, I know I keep saying this is a really good point, really good questions, but you are making really good points, so I'm going to keep saying it. I like James Garner, and if you said to me, would I rather see Fred or James Garner start next season? It's close. It's very close. I think, depending on what day you ask me, you might get a different answer. He probably, for me, needs another season on loan, but it's very close. I think Ollie said he's going to see how he gets on in the summer in pre-season, so he might be able to force his way in. The problem with that is sometimes pre-season doesn't tell you everything you need to know. Andreas Pereira looks like the best. He looked like the best midfielder in the world, didn't he, in pre-season? And then you put him in the first team, and he just wasn't happening. So it is a good shout, James Garner. A player that sort of excites me is Hannibal Mejbri. You mentioned him. He's just so skillful. He's so good on the ball. He's a little bit crazy, isn't he? He's got that attitude, arguing the ref. You saw it in the last under-23s game, giving it
he got the red card for arguing with the referee.
He did that thing, didn't he, where he waved an imaginary card and he called the player over to get the card. Yeah, he went, come here. And then the referee said, stop doing that. And he just carried on doing it and got a second yellow. So he's got a bit of that edge to him, which I like. Very talented. I know that we do the academy review and Dave Pritt keeps raving about Ethan Galbraith. I think the player, though, that he might not be there yet, but one that, for me, I'm going to look forward to seeing in a Manchester United shirt is Charlie McNeil. Just because he scores loads of goals, doesn't he? Ridiculous amount of goals. I thought it was a typo when I saw how many goals he got. I thought, no, he's not scored 600 goals in his career. It must be 60, and it is 600. I thought they'd added on an extra zero.
He kissed the United badge against after scoring 4 goals against City as well. So that sounds
living our dream, innit? Living our dream. Imagine if we were playing in United versus City and we'd come from City's academy, we'd all be doing that, wouldn't we? And he's doing it. You got to love that, man. Seriously. So I can't wait to see him. I think he's probably a season away. He might get a couple of games in the Europa, I hope we're not in the Europa next season, in the Carabao Cup or maybe in the Champions League, dead rubbers. But yeah, Charlie McNeil's one I'm definitely looking forward to seeing playing in the future. And if his goal scoring record's anything to go by, I think he broke Mason Greenwood's record, didn't he? In terms of how many goals he got in the academy and stuff, then he's going to be an absolute phenomenon.
I think Hannibal Mejbri is like the Jack Grealish of Premier League, always getting fouled on and, becoming angry. So
even when he was it? I think it might have even been his Tunisia debut, where he posted a picture, or it was a United debut, or his Tunisia debut, and the picture he posted was of him getting fouled. It's like he's always like to remind everyone he's getting fouled. He's always telling the ref, even on his social media posts, he's like posting pictures of himself getting fouled. He's just got that about him, and I think he's that type of player that he'll have you not me, because I haven't got any, but he'll have you tearing your hair out at times, and then at other times you'll be going, wow, what am I watching? Do you know what I mean? Take a bow, son. So yeah, I'm hoping that he can have a long career at Manchester United because I think he'll have a lot of success. Well, like you said, you pointed out, we've got a long history of great academy players, and we've got a good academy set up at the minute. And I think a lot of it is down to the coaches we've got and the fact that you've got a manager who's willing to give players from the academy a chance. Jose Mourinho didn't bother with the academy; he didn't care about it. It was an afterthought, if that. But you look at Ole. He's given the likes of Brandon Williams, James Garner, Dylan Levitt, mainly in Astana with that game where he gave everyone a debut, but he's given them a chance. We've seen him trusting the likes of Anthony Elanga, of course, who's another great youngster, scored his goal against Wolves as well. Mason Greenwood, he's handled him very well. Ollie will give young players a chance. So I think that's got to give these youngsters confidence because, if you're playing well for the academy or if you go out on loan and do well, you've got a manager for the first team who is willing to abide by those principles of Manchester United and giving our youngsters a chance because it's what makes us a very special club, in my opinion. I'm looking forward to seeing all those players you mentioned earlier, hopefully starting for the first team soon and bringing us some success.
Yeah, definitely. Jay, one serious question which I have been, dying to ask. Pepsi Max Cherry or Coca-Cola Cherry?
You can't see what's in there. Or anyone that's ever watched the channel, ever watched me on social media, listen, it's Father's Day today, and I got one of my presents my favourite present was a bottle of Pepsi Max Cherry. It's Pepsi Max Cherry all the way. And I'm not sponsored by Pepsi, by the way, but if they are watching, feel free to get in touch. I don't want any money. I'll just have free Pepsi Max Cherry because that'll save me about 500 quid a month. One of my favourite drinks. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just can't stop drinking it.
Drink water, not Pepsi.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah, start doing a Ronaldo. Start putting water on there instead. Yeah, good advice actually. I'm not advising anyone to drink Pepsi Max. Go out there, listen to Priyan, drink water. That's more healthy for you.
But even like Jay, even Cristiano doesn't like Coca-Cola, so let's shift to Pepsi maybe.
I hope you guys have got lawyers if you're going to start slagging off Coca-Cola. I'm not getting involved in that. Hey, they'll come for you. Trust me. Each to their own. I just like Pepsi Max. Jay.
So Jay, thank you so much for coming on. It is an honor to talk to you. Priyan, everyone in the United Star are big fans of Stretford Paddock, and of course you. Jay, thank you so much for coming on. Any parting words that you might have for the fans in India?
Listen, don't let anyone say any differently. You're a massive, massive part of this fan base. You're an important part of this fan base as any fans from anywhere. And it's what makes Manchester United special. The fact that we've got millions of fans like you guys over in India who, sometimes getting up at silly hours. You're having to make those sacrifices to try and find a channel that's got the game on. You make more sacrifices than most people do. And we appreciate it. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate, from a personal point of view, the support we've had on the channel as well. We wouldn't be able to do it without our fans over there, especially in India, who's so vocal, so passionate. Sometimes I get these messages and I get these tweets and I think, you guys make me look sort of like a part-time fan. Do you know what I mean? It's like the passion there is great. And I think that while we've got fans like you guys, we're going to be in safe hands, because no matter what happens with the Glazers, as long as we've got fans like the guys that we've got, like you guys, we'll be okay. And that's what makes Manchester United special.
Means a lot coming from you, Jay. Thank you so much. It was an honor for me to talk to one of my heroes. Same for Priyan, I think. Thank you so much, Jay, for coming on the channel. We are the United Star. Check out our Twitter handles and Instagram handles. Subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.
See you, lads. Thanks a lot.